welcome all of you on behalf of the Memorial Congregation this morning. As many of you know, we have Brother Charles Valores with us today, and he's going to speak to us on the subject, Jehovah's Day of Fury. When is it? How should it impact our lives? Brother Valores, please.
I'm a little nervous. So, put up with me. People of the world years ago hardly believed that the world, the earth, the nations in it, the people in it were in jeopardy of God's judgment. I remember going out in the field service back in the 50s, and you could hardly convince anybody that we were in the last days, which is not the case today. If you can find anybody at home, get into a discussion with them, virtually everybody feels that some kind of a conclusion is coming. The human family is facing some kind of a destruction. Now, some think it's coming from an asteroid that's going to be deflected from some orbit it's in and destroy the Earth. Others think nuclear weaponry will, in the hands of people who don't know how to live peacefully, is going to bring a destruction. Some think that there's going to be a ecological collapse, and man has tampered so much with the systems that Jehovah has put in place that the earth will be uninhabitable. They have different views, but we know that this is coming from Jehovah God. There's no question in our mind. The Father is going to bring a judgment about, and the Bible speaks of that as a day of fury. If we have any visitors here, I mean people who are not Jehovah's Witnesses, if I should move along a little more rapidly than you'd like, ask some who are Jehovah's Witnesses later, and they'll explain it. Because I just found out that this 45-minute talk is going to be delivered in half an hour. We used to call them hour talks. A sister called me the other day and she said, can you believe this? Now we're going to have an hour talk in 30 minutes. I said, well, we can have 2-hour talks in 30 minutes. So anyway, this Day of Fury is interesting. And the reason that I thought I selected this, even though we are Jehovah's people and understand this, is that, to be honest with you, this is a parallel of Noah's day. And according to the scriptures, on the surface, even though things were so rotten below the surface in Noah's day, on the surface it looked very normal. And that can lull us to sleep, those of us who know the truth. And so from time to time we need to re-alert ourselves to the seriousness of the times, not thinking this is something we talk about as a doctrine but don't sense or feel as real. So we're going to take the time to look at a few scriptures here, some of these texts we know, and reflect on them again. How should they impact our life? What should this cause us to do that is different, possibly, than from we are doing? Let's just take a look at one scripture first to show how Jehovah is going to bring an end. It's Isaiah chapter 13. 13th chapter and verse 9. It says, look, the day of Jehovah is coming, cruel both with fury, notice the word, and with burning anger, in order to make the land an object of astonishment. Now watch, here's the key. And that it may annihilate the land's sinners out of it. So Jehovah's Day of Fury obviously is simply to destroy the wicked, do away with them. People who are unwilling to accept Jehovah for whom he is and make adjustments and changes in their lives. Now, when you get in a conversation with somebody about the last days, I imagine you as we go to Matthew 24. We read verse 3, what's the evidence, the sign that we would see? We start down, then just wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, and the like. Get over to the book of Luke, pestilences are added, increase in violence. But there are prophecies in Revelation that we rarely read to people at the doors, yet they're very powerful, especially to us who understand when the revelation is taking place, now. The fulfillment of all these prophecies is now, since 1914, since the Lord's Day began. So let's take a look at two of them, okay? First, let's go to the 6th chapter of Revelation. Now, here we have what worldly people call the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Revelation and Apocalypse, same book. And whether there are 4 or 5 is always a question. But this is interesting because this was written, it made no sense to people until those who were really seeking the truth looked into it carefully, found the proper time when this was to be fulfilled, and then linked it up with current events. And it just falls together unbelievably clear. So let's start with verse 2. I saw and look a white horse. The one seated upon it had a bow. Now that's like a bow and arrow. And a crown was given him, so he's a king. And he went forth conquering and to complete his conquest. Now this is Jesus Christ enthroned as king. And the first thing he does is go to war, as we know in the 12th chapter, against Satan, to throw him out. So 1914, Jesus enthroned, the kingdom is established. Verse 3. And he opened the second seal. I heard the second living creature say, "Come," and another came forth, a fiery colored horse. And to the one seated upon it there was granted to take peace away from the earth, so that they should slaughter one another. And a great sword was given him. 1914 saw World War I begin. Notice it says peace away from the earth. It was the whole earth that was involved in this, not one nation or another. This has a peculiar fulfillment starting in 1914. Now, has it gotten worse since? Of course. World War I came to a conclusion. 20 years later, World War II started. By the way, World War I was not called World War I. When it was finished, they called it the Great War. They only named it World War I after World War II. It was interesting. But at any rate, here's what's happening today. I did a little research, found out something that just amazed me. 20 years ago, in the 1980s, it was calculated by various agencies on this earth that the world had amassed weaponry 6,000 times greater than all of the weapons exploded in World War II. That's some like 20 years ago. And it's gotten worse today. Instead of things quieting down, people figuring out that war doesn't solve any problems, it's gone in the other direction. So when it says that since 1914 there has been war, and this red horse represents it, we acknowledge this is a fact. All right, let's move on to 5. He opened the third seal. I heard the third living creature say, "Come," and I saw, and look, a black horse. The one seated upon it had a pair of scales in his hand. I heard a voice as if in the midst of the 4 living creatures say, "A quart of wheat for a denarius. 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. Do not harm the olive oil and the wine." Now, what is this all about? Well, this has to do with famine. This particular horse or horseman, he's when he rides with the scales in his hand, it says that a quart of wheat for a denarius. You may remember in Jesus' illustration, a denarius represented a day's work. Now, you brothers and sisters, some of you have jobs and you go to work, don't you? How would you like to work all day? And when you finished, and back then it was 12 hours. okay? You work 12 hours, it's still done, they give you a quart of wheat. What would that's starvation rations. But so it's telling us something. The world would be in a situation where there would be hunger. Is that true? I'm not. I don't know if you're aware of this. 1 billion people go to bed hungry every night. Look at us. We don't go to bed hungry. We don't say, "I wonder if we're going to eat today." We say, "What will I eat today?" Should we have lamb? No, I don't know. Let's have a roast. Let's have a roast. Let's have pork. Let's chicken. They just want a handful of food. In the period of 45 minutes, the length of this talk initially, 540 children die. Lack of food. And it's every day 25,000 into the graves. Every day. And that's been for the last 40 years or more. Never missed a day. 25,000 children in the grave every day. Starve to death or die from a disease related to lack of food. So, we forget this because of our society in which we live here. We forget what's going on throughout the globe. But the Bible prophesied this, starting in 1914 till now. And here it is. 7. He opened the fourth seal. I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." And I saw, and look, a pale horse. The one seated upon it had the name Death. And Hades, which some think is the fifth horse, was closely following him. So here we have people dying and being put in the grave. Now watch how this concludes. Authority was given them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with a long sword. There's the first or second horseman, remember? And with a food shortage, and with deadly plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth. So the diseases, the hunger, it's all right in that verse. Now this prophecy is quite interesting, isn't it? Because from Revelation 1:1, we know that all of this was to take place since 1914. And here it is. It's not a surprise to us, but does it alert us anymore? Maybe we were excited about it when we first saw it, but been through 30, 40 years. Things look pretty normal on the surface. You have to be careful you're not lulled to sleep. All right, let's go to another one. We can discuss the attitudes of people. We'll close Revelation for now. But I'd like to read something to you. When you talk about the attitudes of people in the last days, we usually go to 2 Timothy 3. I'd like to read 2 Timothy 3, but not out of the New World Translation. So just leave your Bibles closed. Listen to this. This is from the Amplified Bible. Understand this, that in the last days, that's now, will come perilous times of great stress and trouble, hard to deal with, hard to bear. People will be lovers of self and utterly self-centered, lovers of money, aroused by an inordinate, greedy desire for wealth, proud and arrogant and contemptuous boasters. They'll be abusive, blasphemous, scoffing, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, and profane. They will be without natural affection, callous, inhuman, relentless, admitting of no truce or appeasement. They'll be slanderers, false accusers, troublemakers, intemperate, loose in morals and conduct, uncontrolled and fierce, haters of good. They will be treacherous, betrayers, rash, inflated with self-conceit. Now listen to this next part. They will be lovers of sensual pleasures and vain amusements more than and rather than lovers of God. I think about all the things that amuse people today they're just weightless, shallow, foolish, waste of time. For although they hold a form of piety, they deny and reject and are strangers to the power of it. Their conduct belies the genuineness of their profession. Avoid all such people. Turn away from them. I've never seen one quite as vivid as this. It's beautifully written. But does it not describe the people today? Political developments, now I'm looking at the time, and we haven't got time to read this. So we won't. There. Political developments are quite interesting. The 17th chapter describes a wild beast that, if you remember, then went into non-existence, then came out of the abyss. Remember? And we identify this clearly as the United Nations, which the League of Nations, which existed when World War II started. It went into a state of non-existence, and then it came back again as the United Nations. And the scripture says what? It gets its power from the other nations. There were 7 basic leading nations that involved themselves with God's people over the centuries. You look this over and you say, well, it's Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, Anglo-American, 7, okay. And then the 8th, they say, is the one that gets its power from the others, the beast that was and isn't. We're out of beasts. You're out of heads on the beast. There are no more. We now live in the end of that succession of governments. I mean, it's here, it's now. Or you go to the image in Daniel chapter 2, the head of gold, the breast and arms of silver, and the belly of bronze, and the legs of iron, and the feet of iron and clay, and that's it. Where are we? We're in the feet. We don't have aluminum and molybdenum and manganese, and we're out of metals. So right now we sit in the stream of time at the end of all these prophecies. And so we should be alerted, excited. And if anything, it should move us to be more involved in God's work. Another prophecy that it points to our time now is in Isaiah chapter 2. Perhaps we could take a brief look at that. Would you turn your Bibles there, please? This is one of the most interesting prophecies to take apart in detail, not that we have the time, so we'll have to do it quickly. First off, notice please verse 2. So it's Isaiah 2:2. It must occur in the final part of the days. Now you must remember that expression. By the way, the King James Bible and the Jewish Publication Society, it says in the last days. So we're talking about now. It must occur in the final part of the days that the mountain of the house of Jehovah will become firmly established above the top of the mountains, and it will certainly be lifted up above the hills, and to it the nations must stream. Let's pause. What is the mountain of the house of Jehovah? When Isaiah wrote this, the temple existed. That was the house of Jehovah. The mountain upon which it sat was Moriah. So he's saying in the last days, people would say, let's go up to the mountain of the house of Jehovah. But today, it doesn't exist. Well, the mountain's there, but the temple's gone. Yet we know through our study of the Bible, the great spiritual temple exists in the last days. That was the center of pure worship. If you wanted to worship the true God then, you had to go to that temple. The same is true today. Want to worship the true God, you have to be involved in his spiritual temple. And we've studied this in detail. It extends from heaven, according to the book of Hebrews, to the earth. We are in the courtyards of it when we're in the truth and involved in the work that he's assigned us. So it's fascinating to see this prophecy was saying this would happen in the last days. But it continues. 3, many peoples will certainly go and say, "Come, you people, let us go up to the mountain of Jehovah, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will instruct us about his ways, we'll walk in his paths." So today, people come to the truth. Why? They want to know the truth. So tell us. And Jehovah, through his organization, instructs the people, and they walk in his paths. They change their lives to be in conformity with God's will. It's exciting to be in the truth today. And like my wife and I told you when we were here, and I mean it, we've been in 22 states. You have the best territory we've ever been in. Don't complain about it. We never found a territory where we could talk to more people than Houston, Texas. So you're involved in this just as in other countries. Like the brother that went in, he and his wife went into Albania. I was just telling one of the friends here recently. I had the opportunity to marry that couple up in Chicago years ago. But he went into Albania, the first missionaries in there. There were 26 publishers about 15 years ago. There are now 3,900. So we're seeing increases. You have it locally, and we have it in other parts of the earth. So this prophecy is being fulfilled. And the next verse says that they beat their swords into plowshares. So we're talking about peaceful people. That excludes almost all religious organizations because they're willing to kill to defend national boundaries and other interests. Something else in Revelation that we find interesting. We've been waiting for the United Nations to turn on religion. And you have to say religion is getting more and more in the news, involved in all kinds of problems. I just wonder if you've seen these. This is old. This one here is old. It's been around a long time. Remember seeing that one? Afghanistan, Christian and Muslim, they're killing each other. India, Hindu and Muslim, killing each other. The West Bank, Muslim and Jew, killing each other. Northern Ireland, Catholic and Protestant, killing each other. Down here, guys holding a sign, required an international body to keep peace among the world's religions, United Nations. Political cartoon. A cartoonist figured it out. Some of the politicians are lagging behind here. Here's another one. You see that over there? Good. You read the small print at the bottom? Now, this is a caricature of Uncle Sam. He's holding a dead child. And he says, "Tell the president we found the weapon of mass destruction in Iraq. Religion." Now think of that. So this cartoonist got it. Catch this one? This one came out not long ago. Shows two tanks. One's white, one's black. Bunch of people behind the white tank. The black tank, you know the bad guys and the good guys, white and black here. The black tank, world religious war. Religious war, okay? The white tank, secular forces, governments. They're opposing one another. And the people back here say, holding the white tank, it's our only hope. If government doesn't go after religion, we're all dead. So we've been looking at this in the book of Revelation for decades. And finally, the world's starting to see it. Years ago, the East and the West had thousands of nuclear weapons aimed at one another in the form of missile warheads. And these nuclear warheads can wipe out a city. And there were thousands. They were aimed at the United States and other Western countries. The United States had them aimed at the USSR. And then they backed away. And you may remember why. They called it MAD. Remember that? Mutual Assured Destruction. Meaning, it doesn't matter who starts the war. The others will retaliate and we're all dead. So, since we don't all want to be dead, let's back off. And you remember, they did. Do you recall that? You older guys, I see the heads going like this. Younger people going. Well, that happened in our generation. And so we remembered. They backed down because they said, otherwise we're all going to die. And they don't want to die. However, today, people strap themselves with explosives. And they go out finding a group of people where they can kill themselves and as many other bodies as they possibly can. Or they fly into buildings with aircraft. They sacrifice. They don't care if they die. So there is now no deterrent as there used to be, because they have been religiously brainwashed into thinking this is a good thing. Satan has so manipulated the people today that the wars that we used to see, defending a specific parcel of property, that is no longer the case. So we are looking at a very hostile world, and Jehovah foretold it. And this is all indicative of the fact that Jehovah's end of this system is close. Now, what about us? How should this affect us? I mean, there's things we need to give some thought to. For instance, we believe we're living in the last days. Your neighbors, my neighbors, if they watched us day by day, would our way of living, our form of life, our program, convince them that we believed the end was coming? Or would we look like everybody else in the neighborhood? Now think about that. We really believe the end is coming? Jehovah's Day is upon us? That wasn't the case with Noah. The people who lived knew exactly, this man, he's different. He's building this thing. And that was testimony, his work was testimony to what he believed. If people look at us carefully and watch us day to day, can they see any difference between the way we act and the people around us? Or are we just like, have we melded right into society? It's a question each needs to ask himself. Let's take a look at Revelation chapter 3. You may remember that the second and third chapters of Revelation were written to 7 congregations in Asia Minor, but they were representative of congregations today because the Revelation was not written for people of that time. It was written for people in the Lord's day, which is quite clear from the first chapter or two, right? So while he speaks of the congregation in Thyatira and Sardis and Philadelphia, he's really speaking about congregations that could be described such as that in our day. So we need to take this personally because it didn't have to do with these ancient groups. Let's take a look at what it says here in Revelation 3, and I'm going to read verses 1 through 3. To the angel of the congregation in Sardis write, these are the things that he says who has the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars. Now that's Jesus. So Jesus is now speaking to the congregation. I know your deeds, that you have the name, that you're alive, but you are dead. Become watchful. Strengthen the things remaining that were ready to die, for I've not found your deeds fully performed before my God. Therefore, continue mindful of how you have received and how you heard, and go on keeping it, and repent. Certainly, unless you wake up, I shall come as a thief, and you will not know at all at what hour I shall come upon you. Now, did you notice this? In verse 1, he says, I know your deeds. In verse 2, he says, I have not found your deeds fully performed. Now, we're talking about work, activity. Like Noah worked on the ark, and people could see this man is working for this cause, for this belief. Can people see that in us? Okay, let's approach it from a different angle. We all have places where you live, residences. You live in a house, you live in an apartment, a condominium, double wide, tent, whatever. But you live in some kind of a residence, right? And sometimes, have you ever noticed one of your appliances will die, like a toaster? It goes legs in the air, it's over. What do you do? You replace it. Let's say the refrigerator goes down. Your refrigerator quits. They're made by men. They eventually, sometimes they can't be repaired. So you need a new refrigerator. How do you go about getting one? Well, the first thing you have to do is measure the opening that your old refrigerator sits in, because you've got cabinetry and counters that butt up against it. It's a specific size. And you don't want to redo the whole kitchen, so you measure it. And you know the dimensions. And by the way, they're fairly standard, certain ones. Then you call your wife and you ask her what bells and whistles she wants on this. Do you want the refrigerator on the top and the freezer on the bottom, or freezer on the top, refrigerator on just side by side? You want water, ice cubes, tray? What do you want? She figures it all out. Then you do color, Is it going to fit? Avocado is gone. So you're going to get cream color. It's going to be white. It's going to be stainless steel. You figure this out. Okay. You know what you end up with? A brand, a model number, which will give them the perfect dimensions, and then your color selection. That's all. Okay, now, what do you do at this point? You know exactly what you want. This is a big purchase. So do you just run down to the first store and buy one? You go to Best Buy. You go to Fry's Electric. You go to Sears. You go to J.C. Penney's. You check every outlet you can that sells this brand, model number, and color, and you get their price. Because you want to buy, this is what you want, and that's the product you want to get, but at the lowest possible price. Is there anything wrong with that? No. But is that the way we look at the truth? I want to live forever. I want to live in the new system. I want to live as long as God lives, because that's what he's promised me. With peace and quietude, and see my loved ones again. I want to be there. Now, how little can I invest in this and still get it? How could we cheapen this by viewing it that way? I have not found your deeds fully performed before my God. See, so sometimes we just, because of the way the society we're in, the way we think, how little can I do and still make it? That would really be wrong, wouldn't it? We should be saying, after God offers us this indescribable gift, what more can I do? How much further can I be involved in the truth? What can I do away with that is now occupying my time in a worldly sense and invest in the kingdom work? I just like to read this to you. This has to do with an attitude that people had back in the days of one of the prophets, but it's prophetic of our day. The people back there, when Ezekiel was announcing the destruction of Jerusalem and Judea would be without inhabitant. He was foretelling this, for Jehovah had given him the message. But the people didn't want to hear it, and they didn't believe him. And we're there. This is a parallel prophecy of our day. So kindly notice how this is worded. Son of man, Jehovah says, look, those of the house of Israel are saying, the vision that he's envisioning is many days off, and respecting times far away he's prophesying. Well, the end isn't near. I mean, look, things are going pretty well. My life's okay. Therefore say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord Jehovah has said. There will be no postponement anymore as to any words of mine. What word I shall speak, it will even be done, is the utterance of the sovereign Lord Jehovah. There will be no postponement anymore. We really have run out of time. Now, many of us have been in the truth a long time. I just passed 51 years baptized. I know I don't look that old, but... And in my lifetime, in my years in the truth, which is not that long compared to some, I've seen so many of these prophecies fulfilled. They're finished. They're behind us. And there's not much we're waiting for. Jehovah could bring the end at any time, and nobody could complain you didn't give it enough time. I kind of like I like to do jigsaw puzzles. I get to do one about every 4 years. Who's got time, right? But I like about 1,000-piece puzzles, good for me. And I don't know how you do them, but first thing I do is dump them all out on you need a big table. Dump them all out, try to get the dust away, the shavings, and I turn all the pieces over. And then I'll look for the corners. Now, there are 4 corners. I find the corners, and then you look at the picture on the box, and you notice that these 2 are blue, and this one's brown, and that's whatever. And you stick them out here, and then I look for the straight pieces. And I try to find how these straight pieces form the frame. And then I'll look for big blobs or sections of color. For instance, maybe there's a lot of yellow down here, some yellow flowers in the foreground off to the left. I get all the yellow pieces, and I'll work on that. There's a red barn over here. Get all the red pieces, put the barn in, try to where it should kind of be. And maybe you could kind of see a horizon. You sort of link it over to the side. You know what I mean? You take them out one at a time till all that you end up with is the sky usually, because all these blue pieces. And then they're all the same color. They don't. And so you try to see an unusual shape maybe, and then you look for that unusual shape in some of these existing pieces. And you get down to, not much of this puzzle left, 30, 40 pieces out here. And it seems to me I always run into this snag. There's one shape. I'll pick up every piece, and I'll try to fit it. It won't fit. I take the next one. And I go through all 30 pieces, and it won't fit. Nothing fits. And I say, I hate this. There's a piece missing. I got a 1,000-piece puzzle. I got 999 pieces. It's probably on the floor of the puzzle company somewhere. And it's irritating. But then you go a little further and you find, well, this one fits here. And every time you put a piece in, you have less pieces out here and a smaller area to fill in. And eventually you'll know they'll all fall in there. You don't see how they go, but when you, one at a time as they go in, you will eventually get them all in, and sure enough, that piece is there. It's not lost. You couldn't see how it fit. Who's the king of the north? What is going to trigger the attack against Babylon the Great on the part of the nations of the world? Something's going to do it. It's the last straw. What will the length of Armageddon be? it drag on to weeks, months? How will it come? God's people are going to be attacked by the nations. What form will that attack take? Will all of the anointed be here? Will just some of them? Will China ever open up? We have questions, and there are few pieces left, not many pieces left. Some of them we know exactly what the piece looks like. We just can't fit it in here. We don't know where it fits. So brothers and sisters, we're living in an exciting time in human history. Exciting. But to be honest, because of the society in which we live, you can fall asleep and miss the whole thing. Right now, almost all of the sand is in the bottom of this hourglass. There's just a few grains left. Now is a time for us to be super zealous in the work our Father has assigned us to do. Maybe then we can survive Jehovah's great day of fury.
Thank you very much, Brother Valores, for that faith-strengthening discussion. We appreciated it so much. This is a figure I'm not used to reading. Attendance 195. Well, we have many visitors with us today, and we're happy that you are here with us. We hope that you will remain for the Watchtower study. We'd like to mention the talk for next week, and I was noticing in looking at this that it's kind of a sequel maybe. It's maintain your confidence clear to the end. So that will fit in very well with some of the things that Brother Valores spoke about. So now we're going to go into our Watchtower study. We'll ask Brother Treywick, please, to do that for us.
All right. So Brother Valores served us, of course, as circuit overseer many years ago. Today he serves as a district overseer in California, and he'll tell us a little bit about that perhaps. We have a few questions for him that we thought we might enjoy hearing his answers to. First of all, Brother Valores, how long you've been in the traveling work and how you and your wife got started in the traveling work. Come on up, please. I thought that was your
Kind
choice.
of scary, you know.
You can stand behind the wall.
Okay.
I was kidding.
What was the question?
Forgot. Throw this out. How long you've been in the traveling work and how you and Ellie got started in the traveling work?
We started in traveling work in February of 70. So next month we will have, I will finish 38 years. Ellie was with me for 37. Well, we married back in 64. We were both pioneers. So all our 42 years of marriage, we were in full-time service. So we pioneered together where I was serving where the need is great in Virginia. Then we special pioneered in Virginia, and then they asked us into the traveling work. Back then, if you had a pulse, they'd ask you into the traveling work. And so we qualified. They just sent a letter and said, fill out the application, and that was it.
Well, we're glad they did and that you accepted.
Yeah.
I know you're going to have to think hard on this one, that many years in the service, but tell us about a memorable experience in the traveling work. Have you had one?
Ellie was out in service one snowy day in Pennsylvania, Corey, Pennsylvania. And I remember she and a young girl, maybe 10 years old, went up the stairs of this. I mean, it was overcast, and there was just this single building, and it wasn't like a street full of houses. It was rural. But upstairs were a couple of apartments. She knocked on the door, and a blind man answered. And she started to talk to him, and he said, come on in. And she hesitated. He sensed that she hesitated. He couldn't see her. But he said, it's okay, there's someone else here. He was kind. And she saw a woman in the background. Actually, they were living together, both of them high school teachers. So she went in with the little girl, sat down, and began to witness to him, and went to Isaiah 35, spoke about, because she acknowledged his inability to see her, and explained the promises of the new system, and he listened very carefully. We were staying that week with the parents of this young girl, and they had just come in the truth. They were new. But Ellie felt, why not have them call on this gentleman? Because she was there for quite a while and sensed real interest. So the little girl went home, told her parents about it. Of course, Ellie and I were there, and she explained what the situation was. We left. They were the host congregation that week for an assembly somewhere. At any rate, the study was started. The couple got married, had a couple of children. They came in the truth. He's been pioneering 25 years. He's on dialysis. He's very sick. Has diabetes. He's been an elder all those years. His wife's pioneered. The two kids are pioneers. One's at Bethel. The couple where we were staying, who started the study there in the traveling work today. But my wife was great at starting studies. She helped a lot of people in the truth. And those of you sisters who worked with her, she had a mild and gentle spirit about her that was just attractive. People were attracted to her. That was a great experience.
That was. We're sure there are many, many more. We wish we could hear them.
I looked on there. I looked at his notes. It says, "What do a DO do?"
That's the next.
He wrote this.
I didn't have spell check. I guess grammar check. Well, since you brought it up,
Okay.
part of your traveling work has, of course, been as a district overseer.
Yeah. We did district work before we came to Houston, of course. We were in the circuit work for 3 years, then district for 11, then back in the circuit work for about 13, then back in the district now for 10. And Ellie's health didn't lend itself well to district work. It was hard for her, so we stayed out of it for many years. Until finally one day she said, we went to an assembly in 1997 down in San Diego, and we had all these great experiences we were listening to, because it was all about the Pacific Rim, Papua New Guinea and Bora Bora and all those places. These missionaries come up to tell you how they're sleeping in the grass with the snakes, and they only had one pair of clothes, but they brought all these people in the truth. And we were listening to these experiences. And when we were driving on our way home that night, she said to me, "I think if they ask us again to go back in the district work, which we'd refused repeatedly, we ought to take it." She says, "You know what we're really saying is, here I am. Send him." I said, "That's not right." So she bit the bullet, and we went into the district work, which was hard for both of us. But anyway, what's it like? Okay, that's your question, I guess.
Yes.
But several had asked how we got into it, and I said, we'll probably talk about it later. So anyway, there's a lot of moving involved, because the circuit overseer, for instance, your circuit overseer, I think, has an apartment, I think. So he goes out to each congregation from the apartment, and he's in his own bed every night, and so consequently, he has a place to stay just like your apartment. The district work, you spend like 3 weeks with one circuit. You have an A section of the circuit, then a B section. Then we work 1 week with the circuit overseer. He visits a congregation, and we're just with him. And then during that, what we call a work week, I just have 10 minutes of the pioneer meeting, 20 minutes of the elders meeting, and then give the final talk after the Watchtower study. So that's what the district overseer does during a work week. Okay. So, but then he is with this brother 3 weeks, AA section, B section, work week. Then he goes to another circuit, then another circuit, then another circuit, and the circuits are big. The district is big. Sometimes if you're in an area where there's a sparse population, well, as an example, back in 1981 to 84, we served in District 16, I believe it is, which took in all of North Dakota, all of Minnesota, half of South Dakota, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, a quarter of the state of Wisconsin, half of Iowa, 1/3 of Nebraska, and a quarter of Missouri. And we did it twice a year, because back then we used to have 2 circuit assemblies every year. So we were moving hundreds of miles every Sunday night, Monday, and Tuesday morning. So the one I'm in now over San Francisco Bay area, and I go north almost to the Oregon border, is much smaller, much smaller.
All right. And some would
That's
say
what a
prettier.
DO do.
All right, thank you. I corrected that on here.
I wonder about sometimes why brothers and sisters don't want to go to an international convention if they can afford it. Sometimes money isn't the issue. They have enough money because they spend the same amount of money on a vacation to go somewhere else. These international conventions are absolutely, they're wonderful. Ellie and I, for instance, were in Poland when it first opened up back in 1989. And you can't believe these brothers had been incarcerated. Some of them operating underground for 20, 30 years. Some had undergone torture, separation from their families. And so here you are at this convention, and these families, for the first, they never thought they would ever see, 60,000 people in a stadium, and able to listen to the truth broadcast over loudspeakers and not be harassed by the police. It's incredible to be among them. And when we, in that particular instance, we're at the hotel, they always make a box lunch for you, when you're at the state. Here, we'd sit down with our box lunch and look over, here's a family with a loaf of bread, breaking it up for the children. We couldn't eat. Most all the brothers from the United States just gave our food to these friends. It's incredible to be there. But what would I exchange for that experience? I don't know. They're not all like that, but you see people from all walks of life, things that you see a standard of living like we don't understand. That's good for us. And then when you understand what these brothers have gone through to have the truth, and here it's ours for the taking, and the meetings are there wide open, and they put forth great effort to be at the meetings. Sometimes some of those conventions that when the USSR first opened up, they would be on a train for 3 days to get to the location. And it might have taken 2 or 3 months' salary just for the train fare. You see this going on, and you have to see, it encourages you, it builds you up, it strengthens your determination to do something with the truth. I love those conventions. They're hard. They put you in buses and truck you around like a bunch of chickens, And one of the brothers is the car captain, and he's in charge of counting you as you come in. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We only have 43. There's 45 in the bus. Where are the other 2? Who are they? Do you know where they are? Back at the where? Also, okay, stay here. And then you go out, and while you're gone, 3 sisters go to the restroom. You come back, you put them back, get the 2 in there, and count again. Says, now we're 3 short. What happened? And it goes on and on. I mean, there's a lot of funny things that go on, and it's tiring. But when you come back and you look at your photographs and you think of what you just experienced, I'll tell you what, if you have a chance to go. What amazes me is a brother decides, he says, I've got the money, Brother Valores, but my wife and I have another location we're going to. So where are you going? Las Vegas. Give me a break. This is so shallow with no interest. And they don't want to go to France or Germany or. If you have a chance to go, go. And don't worry about the language. It has nothing to do with your being able to function perfectly because everything is taken care of. Man, I tend to get on a soapbox, and I apologize.
Thank you. Did we ask what a DO did? We wish we had a lot more time, but we really only have time for one more question, and it has to do with young people, and they face a lot of trials and pressures, of course, in school and elsewhere. But what goals would you encourage young people to seek?
I wasn't reared in the truth, so my school years were spent in the world, and I have the scars to prove it. You youngsters in the truth, you might think the truth is restrictive. Your parents are trying to control your life, make you miserable. They're trying to protect you. They're desperately trying to protect you in a very dangerous environment, which you may not think is dangerous. And so sometimes I'll look at an audience like this, and I'll see some teenagers, and they're doing this routine. Because they don't want to hear it, and they think you're wrong. And you know what? We're right. Your parents give you good counsel. Listen carefully. You'll protect yourself from a lot of pain. Now, what should you do with your life? Reach out for pioneering. Bethel, MTS, Gilead, foreign language in your own city. Serve where the need is great. Do something with the truth. Don't sit and look at it. And you get involved in this, and it's an exciting way to live. Is it hard? Yes, it is. Now, might you need some additional education beyond high school? Well, that depends. Many of our brothers and sisters have had none, and they do just fine because the parents are thoughtful enough to direct them while in high school to get education that they need to be able to function fine as an adult outside. If you need something in addition, minimize it. How little can I do, not how much can I do? I think I'll become a brain surgeon. That's just 12 years of education. I could pull it off. That's ridiculous. If you need some, talk to your folks. Get some idea of what you need. Get into the facility, whether it's a trade school or whatever. Get it and get out. Don't wander around in higher education. I talked to a young lady in Temecula, California, and she told me, she said, I'm in college, Brother Valores. I said, well, fine. What's your major? She's in her third year. What's your major? She said, well, I haven't selected one yet. Well, I said, why are you going? Oh, I've taken some classes, and, they're... This sister had no brains. Get in, get what you need, and get out. She's wandering around inside this minefield. It's dangerous. And if you're going to get further education, be sure you're living at home. We just had a sad case. Young man, 5th generation in the truth. Good young man. But he wanted his education at a facility just a little ways away. It's 3 hours away. It's all. Not far. Just before committee a couple of weeks ago. Why? Well, there's no control there. It's no good. Full-time service. Reach out for full-time service. If you need the additional training, okay, fine. That's a personal thing between you and your folks, but do something with the truth. We don't have much time left. You don't want to get into the new order and turn around and look back at your time and say, I wasted this time. That scripture in Ecclesiastes 12:1 is powerful. Remember your grand Creator in the days of your young manhood, before the calamitous days proceed to come. and you'll look back and say, I have no delight in them. That could mean you have no delight in your situation at that time, or no delight in the way you spent your time prior to that. Some of us are getting older, and you start to feel that you can't do what you used to do. Well, when you could, did you? Or do we look back and say, time is gone, and I invested it in the wrong way? And give it some thought. And by the way, I'm going to take this opportunity, no question, but I know I'm looking at the clock. We got 2 minutes. My wife and I loved you folks. We loved Houston. I don't care for the fact that the Houston is dead flat. There's not a bump in this place. It's just... And I didn't like your heat. Here in Phoenix, I had no chance to convince anybody there was no hell. I just said, the scriptures meant nothing. But we loved your territory. It's the best we ever worked. When we were here, 4 congregations were formed in the circuit. When Brother Penn came behind me, 3 more. This is the best territory we ever worked. And you got great brothers and sisters here. We fell in love with you, and that's why I'm back. And if Ellie were here, she'd say the same thing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brother Valores, for sharing those personal thoughts with us. We ran a little bit over time, but I don't think anybody minded that, didn't we? We enjoyed those comments. Have we enjoyed that Brother Valero? How quickly we forget. Have we enjoyed that Brother Valores was able to come to Texas this week? Some of us were able to visit with him a few times throughout the week, but we certainly enjoyed the talk today, didn't we, and his experiences. And we know you interact with a lot of thousands of brothers and sisters. You can't send the love and greetings specifically of Memorial to all of them, but please express our love for their work too.
Our Father, Jehovah God, we come into your presence through the merits of the sacrifice of your Son. We would like to express to you our thanks for being here this morning. You've given us another day of life, which is a precious gift and something we should never take for granted. We're glad to be with our brothers and sisters. We feel safe here. And we understand, however, that there are so many of our brothers in other parts of the world where they don't have such freedom. And even to come together in small groups risks their ability to function. Many are in prison. So please, Jehovah, convince them of our love. We don't know these brothers and sisters in other countries, and many of them speak languages we cannot understand. But we serve shoulder to shoulder because we believe the same. They are united with us in our acknowledging you as our sovereign, and in our hope of a new system to replace this old wicked one. Our hope that the resurrection is soon and we can see those we love again. And someday you're going to eradicate not just the evil people of the earth, but all of the demons and Satan, their leader. And we're going to finally have throughout the universe a complete harmony and peace that we so desire. What wonderful promises you've given us, Jehovah. We have so much for which to be thankful. And down here on the earth we struggle because of the pressures of the system and because of the imperfections that we all have. And there are times we make mistakes and do things that we know pain you. Please, Jehovah, forgive us for these. We know that comes through the merits of the ransom, and that's precious to us, that your Son was willing to give his life as a sacrifice for all of mankind who would accept it. We speak to you as a group here now and ask you to hear our prayer. And later this day, no doubt, all of us will approach you with personal matters of concern. We ask you, Jehovah, please hear our prayer as we offer it through the merits of Jesus Christ's sacrifice. Amen.